Happy Easter, friends! Today it is time for us to feature some ruby chocolate and our Easter egg mold. We are making a hatching unicorn egg. It's going to be stuffed with marshmallow. It's going to be amazing, and we're going to use this little piping bag to make the unicorn horn. And of course, what would it be without edible glitter? So let's go ahead and get started on that. The first thing we're going to work on is the horn, and we're using white chocolate for that. So just get everything else out of the way while we get this sorted. So we're going to take probably half a block of white chocolate, not milk chocolate. Don't use milk chocolate, that will not do the same thing. White chocolate. We're going for pure here, and we're going to tip half of that block out into a microwave safe bowl so that we can work on getting it tempered. Now, make sure your chocolate pieces are broken up nice and small. That will help them to melt more easily and temper more quickly. And you know, if you're anything like me, you don't have a lot of time to wait around for chocolate to temper. So into the microwave and work on that in like really short, low bursts so that it gets tempered nicely. And for the piping bag, I got these double color piping bags where you can put a different color in each side, and I just cut up the middle. So we're just going to use 1/2 of that because it's going to create a nice long conical shape for the horn. So once your chocolate is nicely tempered and melty and good, we're just going to take that and we're going to tip all of it into the piping bag. So get your piping bag, fold the top over so that it is nice and easy to get the chocolate in, and just tip the whole lot in. Take your time with this because you don't want to end up with white chocolate all over the bench if you can avoid it. I usually can't avoid making a huge mess when I'm cooking, but I don't know if that's just me or if everyone's like that. And you're going to want to sort of manipulate the bag to try and get the chocolate all the way down the bottom. Sometimes it gets a bit of an air pocket. And then give it a twist, fold the top back up, and I'm just going to keep that closed with a peg so that it keeps that nice conical shape and doesn't go like floppy and weird. And then into the fridge to get set up. And then we'll start working on the shell of our Easter egg. So we're using the same mold that we used last year, and you may remember from last year that we did cut this in half so that we could join the two halves together. So it won't stay flat anymore. So I've got these two low flat bowls which will be able to hold the mold level while we work on it. So we got ruby chocolate here. I think you guys really enjoyed the last time I used the ruby chocolate. So we're going to use the ruby chocolate today. It's a nice sort of magical chocolate. If I look really uncoordinated cutting this bag open, it's because I'm cutting with my right hand and I'm actually left-handed. So it felt as uncoordinated as it looked. So we're going to tip about half a bag into our bowl, and I love working with this chocolate because it comes already in little buds, so I don't have to chop it up or anything, and it's just so easy to work with. Just a little more than half a bag then, and into the microwave. And again, low and slow, take your time, don't rush this or you'll get it out of temper and then it's just a whole situation. But once it's all nicely melted, you can still see a couple of lumps in there, and I like to have it like that because that's the way that I know that it's going to set. So to get our Easter egg mold filled, we're going to put in about 3 spoonfuls of the ruby chocolate into the mold, and then we're going to work on spreading it up the sides. Because we're doing a hollow egg this time and filling it with marshmallow, it's important that we get good coverage on all sides so that we don't end up with weak spots that will crack easily. So get that spread out, and then I'm actually going to tilt it as well to get that chocolate nice and evenly spread around as much as possible. And then we're going to tip it on over, shake out the excess, and pop it back into our little bowl so that it's nice and level to start firming up. And we will repeat that with the other side. I'll make sure we're scraping off the excess. We don't really want lumpy bits around the edge because we're going to be joining the two halves again later. So then working on the other side and the same thing again. So about 3 spoonfuls of the ruby chocolate. I just can't get over the color of this. It's so amazing. It's pink, but then it's kind of, in real life, it's got an almost sort of mauve-ish tinge to it, which is amazing. I don't know if that comes through on the video very well. So let's get that nicely spread up the sides. And again, doing our little tilting trick, making sure that we're getting a nice thick layer around all the sides, and then flip him over, tip out the excess, and give it a little shake to get any big chunky drops out. And then again, a nice bit of a scrape before we set it back in the bowl to start to firm up. And then just to make sure that we have a really good coverage of chocolate on all sides of the shell, I'm going to repeat that process for each one. So because this chocolate is pretty well tempered, it's already starting to firm up. So I'm just putting another couple of spoonfuls in there, give it a shake around, and then this time when I flip it over, I'm actually going to leave it flipped over like that. And that is so that the edges where we're going to be joining it later on don't end up being the thinnest part. And what I actually ended up doing was taking a chopping board with some baking paper and putting them face down on that. And that just gives the chocolate a chance to run down to where those edges are going to be joining and make a nice thick wall there. And then I pop those in the fridge to firm up while I start working on our marshmallow filling. Now guys, one day I will make my own marshmallows from scratch, but today is not that day. So we are using these Pascal Big Softy marshmallows, and we're going to put, again, about half of a bag into a microwave safe bowl, making sure then in the middle that you go ahead and give one to your 5-year-old because they decided to come in the kitchen at the time. Just add a few more, I guess, if that doesn't seem like enough. And then to help that melt down nicely, we're going to add in 2 tablespoons of water. And that's, again, just to help with the melting process in the microwave. And because we want to maintain the integrity of the marshmallow, once again, low and slow. That I did on like 10-second bursts, as slow as possible, because it melts so quickly. And look how nice and smooth and creamy it is. It's so, melted marshmallow is like the coolest thing ever. So we're gonna go ahead and grab our shell out of the fridge, and we can start getting that filled. So yeah, it's pretty much just what it sounds like. Try and make as little mess as possible, but we will give these a wipe in a minute. And because this marshmallow is so runny, we did have to come up with a stabilizing solution, which ended up being just using a tiny bowl. And once these were full, we want them full but not over full, because we do want the sides to go together without too much of a gap in the middle. Back into the fridge, that goes for a few minutes to start to firm up, really slowly, because it was balancing so precariously and I did not want marshmallow all over my floor. And so once that's been in for a few minutes and started to get set up, it didn't get all the way set up, not even close. It's actually still really runny, but I grabbed it out and cleaned up the edges a little bit, because that's where we want the chocolate to join. And we're going to, once those are cleaned up, we're going to grab back the ruby chocolate, which I just gave 5 seconds in the microwave to get it softened slightly more than it was. And we're going to load up around the edge of one of these sides, making sure that we get the joining dots cleaned out of chocolate so they actually fit together when we go to press them. And a nice thick layer around the edge, because honestly guys, it's way easier to put too much chocolate on your join and then just have to trim it off later than to put not enough and the whole thing doesn't stick together. So this took a great deal of confidence to get these two sides together because the marshmallow is still so runny. So I just kind of got ready, counted to 3 and go for it, and then get the joins met up so that you know that it's nice and centered and nice and straight. And then we're just going to press it together, making sure that we're pressing around the edges to get that join as neat as possible. Of course, there's going to be like a ton of excess you can see there that will trim off, but that just goes back into the fridge. And then we can start, after about 30 minutes of everything being in the fridge, we can start to work on our unicorn horn. So I'm just taking a knife and tracing like a spiral pattern down the length of the unicorn horn so that we can, when we take it out of the bag, we can start to carve that classic unicorn swirly. It's kind of like twisted. You guys probably know what I'm talking about, that traditional twisted unicorn shape. So grab him out of the bag and be gentle, because white chocolate doesn't, it's one of the softest chocolates that you can work with, and this was no exception. So then I'm just going to take my knife. It's a very sharp knife. Be careful with your fingers, guys, and just following that line and just carving out a little bit on an angle on each side of that line to get that twist looking like a unicorn horn, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. And go all the way down, and make sure that when you're getting closer to the tip that your cuts are a bit shallower, because otherwise you'll just cut straight through, and that's kind of not what we're going for. And you can see my tip got a little bit wonky there, but that's okay. Because this is going to be a baby unicorn anyway, so it's probably got a little bit of a kink in its horn, I would think. So next thing we have to do is grab our egg out of the fridge, and his joint is nicely sealed up now, so we are good to go. And we're just going to very gently start to tease the mold away from the egg, because you do not want to get to this point after you've put in so much effort tempering chocolate and melting marshmallows and getting that whole egg to join together, when it was so dangerous with all that melted marshmallow in it, only to have it snap straight in half here. So go nice and slow, take your time, and then grab your sharp knife again and just start to carve away at those excess edgy bits. You don't have to get it perfect, because the world is not about perfect, and this is an artistic interpretation. And you see that little hole there that I've got? That's fine, because this egg is supposed to be hatching, which I'll show you in a sec. Because the next thing that we're going to start to do after we've got this nice and tidied up is we're going to start to cut a hole in the egg. Now, that might sound a bit crazy, but what we're going to have happen is we want our unicorn horn to be poking out of the egg, like the unicorn is hatching out of the egg. So I'm trimming this down because it was just way too long for what we were going with. So trim that off to the size that suits you, I suppose. But yep, this was what I decided. And then I'm going to start cutting like a jagged hole in the egg. And with this, you really, I've kept saying this whole video, but you really want to go slow with this one, okay? And start small. Because if you just go hacking away at your egg willy-nilly, you're going to end up with a hole that's too big, or your egg will just crack completely in half, and that's not really the aesthetic that we're going for. So just a little bit at a time, and keep checking to see if the horn fits. And if it doesn't, just go a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Just nice and slow until you end up with a hole that's big enough for the horn to fit in. And if it does crack a bit, that's okay, because like I said, the egg is supposed to be hatching. That's kind of what we're going for. But you just don't want it to crack too much. So it should hold together pretty well because of the marshmallow in there. You can kind of see that it's gone back to its springy form there. And once your egg, your horn fits in your egg, you can just poke it on in, and then the structure itself is complete. That is your hatching unicorn egg. But of course we're going to get our bench tidied up a little bit and add a little finishing touch, because what would a hatching unicorn egg be without some magical unicorn edible glitter on it? Am I right? I'm so right. So I'm going to sprinkle some white edible glitter all over the horn on all sides, top and bottom. This is a magical unicorn. It needs to have magic, guys. So all sides of the horn will have some edible glitter, and then we're just going to give a little flourish to the top as well, because, I mean, why wouldn't we add more edible glitter to our magical unicorn egg? Yeah, and that is basically how we make a magical hatching unicorn egg out of ruby chocolate, white chocolate, and marshmallow. So I hope that you guys enjoyed watching this year's Easter egg video, and let me know what you think I should make for next year's Easter egg video. Hopefully we get that far. I hope you guys have a great Easter long weekend, and I will catch you all next week. Bye!